Hello, Wellsprings. Welcome to our third installment of Tarot Tuesday. I'm so excited to be here with you again as we slowly move our way through November. If you remember on our first Tarot Tuesday, I mentioned that I wanted to share this with you, this tarot practice, as a way of exploring this as one potential spiritual practice that you already have or that you could develop. And as I think about how very quickly we are just rolling along to the end of this year, I know this time can be particularly hectic, particularly stressful, and the times of COVID only add on to that stress. So finding ways to pause and with intention, attention, and repetition nurture our spirits is particularly important during these days. So I'm glad to be back to share this as a practice. If you were able to join me or to listen to a very long video from last week where I talked about the major arcana, you'll recall that the tarot represents our journey through life, and that the major arcana shows the Fool, and here are two different images of the Fool from two of my decks. The Fool in all of us, that beginner, that spirit of curiosity and wonder that we bring into this world when we are born, and that with practice we can nurture to carry us through all the various journeys we're on. And so the tarot follows then the Fool, the beginner's journey. And the major arcana represent different milestones, different events, different people, different states of being that we as humans experience. The minor arcana then are divided into four suits and represent other elements, and in many interpretations of the tarot, literal elements of our life here in this universe. And so there are four suits, and I mentioned, I think 2 weeks ago, that our modern playing cards, actually with their four suits, grew out of tarot decks. And so those four suits may look a little familiar if you've played cards, with many differences though. So the four suits of the tarot represent different aspects of our experience. And so I'll start with the suit of Wands. The suit of Wands is represented by the element of fire. And so in many wands, you will see some element of fire, or as shows, here in this one, the light of the sun and the blooming of leaves on that wand or branch rod. Those are all terms that different practitioners use for wands. So it represents fire, and it represents our intuition, that sense that we have as we move through the world of things that we know sometimes without knowing how we know it. Our intuition, that still small voice, our inner teacher. Whenever the wands show up in a deck, that means there is something internal that we need to be paying attention to, some spark of energy that we're either repressing or ignoring, or that we're currently channeling and need to continue to. So that is the wands. Fire, the energy of intuition. Swords. I love this one, and I have a different representation. Sword coming out of shadows, cutting through the air. The swords represent air. So the element of air, and for the human condition, the element of our intellect, our thinking selves. Swords are always connected with what is going on in our heads. And very often, particularly in Western cultures, the ways in which we overuse that intellect and can sometimes, I love the literal and metaphorical sense of the ways in which our intellect can cut through bullshit, and can also, in a double-edged sword way, end up cutting us when we are overusing that and relying solely on intellect without the balance of emotion. And that is what the cups represent. So this is the Ace of Cups, and this, I love this image of both hands holding that. Water, as you may have guessed from these two images, the water overflowing in the cup is the element that is associated with cups. And again, the sense of our emotions, the feelings that give us so much information, that move through our body, that can, as I'm sure many of us have experienced, overwhelm us and spill out in ways that are not helpful, but can also move through us in nurturing, absolutely life-giving ways. So cups equals water, equals our emotions. Again, when cups show up in a reading, it means what of that do you need to be paying attention to? So we have wands again representing fire and intuition. We have the swords representing air and intellect, the cups representing water and emotion, and the final suit is the pentacles, which are also called coins or discs, but really, and I love this image for it, what the pentacles or the discs represent is earth and our connection to the actual material physical world. I love in this image that it's actually showing you a garden that is growing, but in this one it is showing you a person with flowers and bees centered in her own body. The pentacles represent our senses, all of the things we can touch and feel and see and taste and hear. They represent physical people, physical things. They're often represented by coins because in the material world, thinking about the material things that we either build or buy, that we make and grow. And so again, thinking about what it might mean if a pentacle shows up in one of your readings, it means to pay attention to what's happening in your body, in your physical world. Is there something you need to, again, thinking of the garden, tend to? Within the minor arcana, then, you have those four suits, starting with the aces and going through the tens, and then you've got also the royal court of pages, knights, queens, and kings, and we'll talk about those royal suits next week. But keep playing or experimenting or studying, whatever way you want to engage. Is it with your mind? Is it with your physical body of making a reading for yourself, thinking, feeling, with your tarot if you have one? And if not, and you just are learning and you have another spiritual practice to engage in, remember that as long as you are entering into that practice with intention, attention, and repetition, you're building a spiritual practice that's going to nourish you. And so, as I have done the past 2 weeks, we will together engage in my one card reading that sets an intention for the rest of this day that I'm in. And if you're watching this 10 hours from now or 3 days from now, you can also join me in this intention for this moment. So we'll take a few deep breaths as I shuffle and feel the cards, hear the cards, and breathe and center myself and think of what I want to manifest for this day. And we have a 7 of Wands. And this looks like a scary image, but the sevens, well, we'll talk about the wands first. The wands, again, are about intuition and about the ways in which we want to channel that nourishing energy of our inner teacher and our inner voice. And the sevens are about the necessity, when we don't know right sort of to do that, of being sure that we're not running away from our own shadows, running away from our own mistakes, but having the strength and the courage to sit in discomfort and confront what needs confronting in ourselves and in others. It's actually, as scary as it looks, an image about strength and about courage. And as we barrel towards the end of this year, for me at least, having some strength and courage to keep doing all the things I need to do feels like a good intention to have for this day. Thank you all for joining me. I look forward to next week when we explore more of the royal court. Be well. I'll see you soon.